I'm glad I could be here today.
So am I. It means a lot to me that you're here.
Rain tapped softly against the window as Sarah Chun held the trembling hand of a dying man. Roland Miller, once the most powerful businessman in the country, lay pale and fragile in his bed, his breathing shallow. "Promise me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "When the time comes, don't let go." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but her grip remained steady. "I won't. I promise." This wasn't how she imagined her first private nursing assignment would go. 6 weeks ago, she was just another nurse at City General Hospital, living a simple, quiet life. Now, she sat beside a billionaire who had pushed away everyone he ever loved, holding his hand as he prepared to leave this world. But this moment, this peaceful goodbye, had taken everything to achieve. A son who hadn't spoken to his father in 27 years. A bucket list of simple wishes from a man who owned 17 mansions. And a young nurse who refused to give up on helping a broken man find peace. As Roland's eyes fluttered closed, Sarah thought back to the beginning. To the day a black car pulled up outside her apartment. To the moment she first walked through those mansion gates. To the day everything changed. Like and subscribe for the next chapter. Will Sarah be able to help Roland complete his final wishes? Find out next time. Sarah Chun woke up at 5 in the morning, just like every other day. She boiled water, took her bath, and dressed in her clean white nurse uniform. Her shoes were polished, her name tagged straight. By 6:30, she was walking through the doors of City General Hospital in downtown Seattle, where she had worked for the past 4 years. Sarah was 24, but most people thought she was younger. Maybe it was her soft voice or the way she moved, quiet, gentle, never rushed. She didn't like loud places. She didn't wear makeup or go to parties. She lived simply, and that was how she liked it. At the hospital, everyone knew Sarah, but no one really knew her. She didn't have close friends. She never dated. People whispered, wondering if something was wrong with her. But Sarah didn't mind. "I'm just waiting for something real," she once told a fellow nurse. "What does real even mean?" the nurse had asked, laughing. Sarah didn't answer. She just smiled and walked away. That Thursday morning started like every other, until head nurse Martinez called her into the office. "Sarah, have a seat," Martinez said, closing the door behind them. Sarah sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "I have a special assignment for you," Martinez continued. "You're one of the best nurses we have. Clean record, no drama. You keep your head down. That's why I'm choosing you." Sarah nodded. "I'm listening. There's a patient, not in the hospital. Private home care, terminal condition, very wealthy family. Billionaire." Actually, Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "What's the condition?" "Stage 4 heart failure. He has about 2 months left, maybe less." Sarah's chest tightened. "What's his name?" "Mr. Roland Miller." The name made Sarah pause. Everyone in Seattle knew the name. Roland Miller was a legend. Once a powerful businessman with companies in technology, real estate, and finance. But for the past 10 years, no one had seen him. People said he lived in a massive estate behind tall gates, alone, sick, forgotten. He requested a private nurse, Martinez continued. Said he wants someone young, quiet, someone who won't ask too many questions. Sarah looked down. "Why me? You match the profile. And he's paying well. Very well. 10 times your monthly salary for just 2 months of care." Sarah said nothing. Her fingers touched the edge of the chair. She didn't care about money, but something about this felt different. "When do I start?" Sarah asked. Martinez looked surprised. "Tomorrow morning. A car will come for you at 7. Sarah stood. "I'll be ready." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat by her small apartment window, watching the city lights. The air was quiet, but her heart wasn't. She had taken care of many patients, old men, old women, some kind, some bitter. But this one felt different. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the name. Maybe it was the mystery. Maybe it was the way Martinez said, "Someone who won't ask too many questions." Sarah closed her eyes. "Just 2 months," she whispered to herself. That's all. The next morning came faster than she expected. At 7 sharp, a black car with tinted windows pulled up outside her building. The driver didn't speak much, just nodded when she got in. The drive to Roland Miller's estate took about 45 minutes. The roads grew quieter. Fewer buildings, more trees. When they finally reached the gate, Sarah's mouth parted slightly. It was massive. Tall iron gates, thick stone walls, security cameras everywhere. 2 guards checked the car before waving them through. The driveway curved around a large fountain. At the end stood a huge mansion, gray walls, tall windows, no warmth anywhere. Sarah stepped out of the car, her small suitcase in hand. A man in a black suit waited at the door. "I'm James," he said, "Mr. Miller's personal butler." Sarah nodded politely. "You'll be staying in the East Wing," he continued. "Your room is ready. The patient is in the master suite. He's awake." Sarah swallowed. "May I meet him now?" James looked at her carefully. "He can be difficult. I understand." "Do you?" James said softly. "Because many before you didn't last 3 days." Sarah said nothing. She just followed him inside. Sarah followed James through long hallways. The mansion was silent. No music, no voices, just cold, clean air. Every step echoed against marble floors. Expensive paintings lined the walls, but they felt lifeless, like decorations in a museum. When they reached the master suite, James stopped. "Whatever he says, don't take it personally," James warned. "He's not used to kindness." Sarah nodded. She knocked softly, then opened the door. The room was large, with curtains drawn halfway. A faint beeping came from a heart monitor beside the bed. And there, lying under clean white sheets, was a man with silver hair, thin lips, and eyes like stone. Roland Miller. He turned slowly to look at her. "So," he said, voice rough and tired, "they sent a child." Sarah walked in quietly. "Good morning, sir. My name is Sarah Chun. I'm your new nurse." He grunted. "You look like you've never even held a man's hand." Sarah blinked, but didn't answer. Roland chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "That's probably a good thing." She moved to check the 4-line. Her hands were steady. "You don't talk much," he observed. "I speak when needed," she replied. "Good. The last one talked too much. I fired her after 2 days." Sarah looked up. "I'm not here to talk, sir. I'm here to help." He watched her for a long time, his eyes sharp, searching. Then he asked a question that made her heart skip. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Are you pure?" Sarah froze. "What?" "You heard me." She looked him in the eye. "Why does it matter?" Roland didn't smile, but something in his face shifted. "Maybe it doesn't," he whispered. "But maybe it does." Sarah finished checking the equipment. "Do you want breakfast?" she asked. "I want silence," he said. She nodded. "I'll be back to check your vitals in 1 hour." As she turned to leave, he called out again. "Sarah." She stopped. "You don't know it yet," he said, eyes still staring at the ceiling. "But you're going to be the last person I trust before I die." Sarah's breath caught. Then she stepped out quietly, closed the door, and stood in the hallway, heart beating louder than it had in years. Sarah stood outside the door for several minutes. Her hands were shaking slightly. She didn't know why she felt so unsettled. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the strange question. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in her nursing career, she wasn't in a hospital surrounded by colleagues and protocols. She was alone in a mansion with a dying man who seemed to see straight through her. She looked at her watch. 8:06. She took a deep breath and walked back down the hallway. James was waiting near the staircase with a breakfast tray, tea, toast, and a boiled egg. "He'll eat if he feels like it," James said calmly. "He didn't touch dinner last night." Sarah took the tray. "I'll try." James raised an eyebrow. "You don't seem nervous anymore." "I'm still nervous," Sarah replied. "I just hide it better now." He gave a small nod of approval. "Good. That's the only way to survive in this house." Sarah walked back upstairs and into Roland's room. He was still lying in bed, same position, same distant stare. His eyes flicked toward her as she entered. "You came back," he said. "I said I would," she replied, setting the tray gently on the table beside his bed. "People say many things," he muttered. "Most of them lie." Sarah didn't respond. She pulled the curtain back slightly to let in a little sunlight. The room brightened just enough to show the pale color of his skin, the deep wrinkles on his neck, the dark circles under his eyes. "Too bright," he said. She stopped and let the curtain hang halfway. Then she picked up his chart and checked his vitals, pulse, oxygen levels, medication schedule. All the while, she said nothing. "Do you always work like this?" he asked after a while. "Like what?" "Like you're not afraid." Sarah looked at him. "I've seen death before. It doesn't scare me." He tilted his head slightly. "And what about me? Do I scare you?" Sarah paused. "No." He gave a slow, dry smile. "Then maybe you're not very smart." She stepped back and gestured to the tray. "Please try to eat something." Roland stared at the breakfast tray for a long moment. Then, very slowly, he sat up. His hand trembled as he reached for the toast. Sarah moved to help him, but he shook his head. "I can do it," he said firmly. She stepped back and watched as he took one bite, then another. He chewed slowly, like he'd forgotten how food tasted. After a few bites, he stopped and looked at her. "Where are you from?" he asked. "San Francisco," Sarah replied. "But I grew up in Portland." "Parents?" "Gone. I was raised by my grandmother." "Married?" Sarah frowned slightly. "No." "Boyfriend?" "No." He raised an eyebrow. "Why not? That's personal." He smirked. "Everything's personal when you're dying." Sarah took the empty teacup and refilled it from the pot. "You don't have to know everything about me." "I want to," he said. "That's why I asked for someone like you." Sarah blinked. "What do you mean?" He sipped the tea carefully. "I've had doctors, nurses, caregivers, all professionals, all trained. But none of them had what you have." Sarah crossed her arms gently. "And what's that?" He looked at her like he was studying her face for the first time. "Stillness," he said. Sarah felt something shift inside her. He wasn't just talking about silence. He meant something deeper, something about how she carried pain without letting it show, how she could sit in a room filled with sadness and still make it feel less heavy. After a while, he pointed to a chair near the window. "Sit down," he said. "I want to look at you." Sarah didn't move at first. Then she walked over and sat. "I'm not here for your entertainment," she said quietly. "I know," he replied. "You're here because I'm dying. But that doesn't mean we can't talk." There was a pause. He kept looking at her. Not in a creepy way, not even in a romantic way. It was more like he was trying to remember something. "You remind me of someone," he said after a while. Sarah tilted her head. "Who?" He closed his eyes for a moment. "My first wife." Sarah's lips parted in surprise. "I thought you never married." He opened his eyes. "That's what the world thinks. That's what I let them think." He turned his face toward the window. "Her name was Elena. She was soft, quiet, just like you. I lost her when I became someone else." Sarah didn't ask questions. She just waited. "She loved gardens," he continued. "Used to plant white flowers near our bedroom window. Every morning I'd wake up and smell them." His voice cracked slightly. "But I got greedy, started chasing bigger things, money, fame, power. One day, she packed her bag and left. Said she couldn't watch me become a stranger." Sarah looked at his hands. They were shaking. She stood up and poured more tea. "You don't have to tell me everything now." But he waved her off. "No, I want to." He looked at her again. "I asked you if you were pure because I wanted to see if there was still someone in this world who hasn't been touched by all this filth. Someone who still believes in simple things." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I'm not perfect." "I didn't ask for perfect," he replied. "I asked for pure." She looked away. "That's not something people talk about anymore." "That's because they've all given up," he said. "But not you. I can see it." There was silence again. Then he reached under his pillow and pulled out a small notebook. The edges were worn, the cover plain. He handed it to her. Sarah hesitated before taking it. "What is this?" "My list." She opened the first page. The handwriting was shaky but readable. Asterisk, walk outside. Eat roasted corn, watch children play, hear someone sing, without a microphone feel the sun, on my face apologize to my son, hold someone's hand, die, without fear, asterisk. Sarah read the list twice. Then she looked at him. "This is your bucket list." He nodded slowly. "But it's not a list for the rich. It's a list for the forgotten." Sarah closed the book gently. "Then let's start with the first one." He raised an eyebrow. "What? You want to walk outside?" she said. "Let's go." He let out a dry laugh. "Girl, I haven't walked more than 10 steps in years. You said you wanted to. That means you're not dead yet." He stared at her like she had just slapped him. Then slowly he smiled. It was small, weak, but real. "You're brave," he said. Sarah shrugged. "No, I just think if you want to feel alive, you have to move." The next morning, The sky was clear. Sunlight slipped through Sarah's window, waking her gently. She lay still for a moment, thinking about the list. There was something powerful about it. It wasn't filled with grand wishes like traveling the world or flying in private jets. It was made of quiet things, things most people forget to ask for. She got ready quickly and headed to the kitchen. James was already pouring tea into a flask. "Morning," Sarah said softly. "Good morning," he replied, placing fresh napkins over a plate of toast. Sarah hesitated. "James, does he really want to do this today?" James stopped for a second. He didn't sleep much last night, but he hasn't stopped talking about it either. Sarah nodded. "Then I'll help him try." She picked up the tray and made her way to Roland's room. Inside, Roland was already sitting on the edge of the bed, a thin robe over his clothes, one hand gripping a cane. "You're early," he said without turning. "You're dressed," Sarah replied, surprised. "Took me 30 minutes just to sit up," he muttered. "But I'm not going to die in this bed." Sarah smiled gently and walked closer. She set the tray down and helped him adjust his position. "Breakfast first," she said. He groaned. "You nurses are all the same." "Good ones are," she answered. He took a small bite of toast and sipped the tea slowly. "You know, I haven't stepped outside in 10 years, he said quietly. Sarah nodded. "You told me. That's why it's the first thing on your list." He looked down at his hands. "My legs are weak." "Then lean on me," she said. He looked at her, eyes sharp. "You're not strong enough to carry me." "I don't need to carry you," she replied. "I just need to walk beside you." Roland stared at her, like he was trying to find something behind her calm eyes. Then, without a word, he reached for her hand. It was cold, thin, but strong in its own way. She helped him to his feet. He leaned on the cane with one hand and held her wrist with the other. "Let's go," he said. The hallway was long. They took slow steps, his body dragging slightly. Sarah didn't rush him. She matched his pace step by step, like a quiet dance. At the front door, James stood ready. He opened it slowly, letting sunlight spill into the hall. Roland blinked against the light. His face tightened. "It's too bright," he said. Sarah turned. "We can come back in." "No," he said quickly. "I want to feel it." Sarah adjusted her grip on his arm. James held the door steady. Together, they stepped outside. Roland paused on the porch, breathing in. The air smelled like grass and wet soil. Birds chirped in the distance. The fountain bubbled quietly nearby. Roland closed his eyes. "I forgot what this feels like," he whispered. Sarah stayed close. "You're doing fine." They walked a few more steps to the bench beside the garden. Sarah helped him sit. He leaned back slowly, his eyes still closed. For a long time, neither of them said anything. Then he spoke. "When I was young, I never sat still," he said. "I thought sitting was for old people, for the weak. I used to laugh at men who sat on porches. Said I'd never waste my time like that." He opened his eyes and looked around. "But this is the first time I've actually seen my garden." Sarah looked at the overgrown hedges and the tall tree in the corner with fallen leaves gathered around its base. "It needs care," she said softly. "Just like me," he replied. A breeze blew, light and cool. Roland tilted his face toward it. Then something happened. He started to cry, not loudly, not in shame, but the kind of cry that comes from deep inside, quiet, tired tears that carried more weight than words ever could. Sarah didn't speak. She sat beside him and let him cry. After a while, he wiped his face. "Sorry," he muttered. "You don't have to be," she said. "I haven't cried in years," he whispered. "That's not something to be proud of," she said gently. He looked at her. "You're not like anyone I've ever known." She smiled faintly. "That's because you've kept everyone else outside." He let out a dry laugh. "Touché." They sat in silence again. Then he asked, "Do you know how many houses I own?" Sarah shook her head. 17. Across 5 countries. She didn't respond. "Ask me how many people live in them." Sarah turned. "How many?" He looked at the sky. "None." She let that settle between them. "I built castles," he said, "but no one wanted to stay in them with me." Sarah leaned forward. "Maybe it's not too late." He turned to her, surprised. "You really believe that?" "I believe people can change, even if it's just one thing. One moment." He watched her, then whispered, "I don't deserve that kind of mercy." She met his eyes. "Maybe not, but you're still human, and that means you still have a chance." That afternoon, Roland asked for something specific. "Number 2 on the list," he said. Sarah blinked. "What?" "Roasted corn." She smiled. "You remembered?" "I never forgot. I just stopped admitting what I missed." Sarah stood. "I'll get it for you." He looked up. "Where?" "There's a woman who sells some outside the hospital. I'll go this evening." He nodded slowly. "I want it burnt at the edges." Sarah's smile widened. "I'll tell her exactly that." Later that day, Sarah returned from the hospital with a small brown paper bag. Inside was one fresh roasted corn cob, golden with just enough char. She knocked softly before entering Roland's room. He was lying in bed, eyes open, waiting. "I brought something," she said. He looked at the bag. His eyes lit up just slightly, but enough. Sarah pulled out the corn and held it near him. He sat up with effort. She placed a napkin on his lap. He reached for it slowly, holding it like a treasure. Then he took one bite. The crunch echoed in the room. He closed his eyes and smiled, for real. "I feel like I'm 20 again," he whispered. Sarah laughed softly. "Do you want water?" He nodded, chewing slowly. She handed him the cup and sat beside the bed. "I never thought corn could make me feel alive," he said. "Sometimes the small things do," she replied. He took another bite, then looked at her. "I want to see children." Sarah tilted her head. "Children." "It's number 3, he said. "Watch children play." Sarah thought for a second. "There's a school 2 streets from here. I pass it sometimes." He smiled. "Tomorrow." She hesitated. "Only if you're strong enough." He nodded. "I will be." The next day, Sarah and James helped Roland into the car. The drive was short, just 10 minutes to the elementary school near the hospital. They parked across the street during recess. The schoolyard was alive with sound. Children running, screaming, laughing like they had no idea what pain was. Roland leaned against Sarah's arm, his breathing a bit heavy, but his eyes didn't blink. A ball bounced toward the street. One boy chased after it, shouting something Sarah couldn't quite hear. Roland smiled faintly. "I used to laugh like that," he said softly. Sarah looked at him. "I believe you." "No, you don't," he said, still watching. "But it's fine. I wouldn't believe me either." Sarah stayed silent. He pointed toward one of the kids. "That one, the tall one with the dirty knees. He looks like Jacob when he was 9. Sarah nodded. "You thought about him last night?" Roland's hand trembled just a little. "I dream about him sometimes. But in my dreams, he never speaks." Sarah watched him carefully. "Do you think he'll listen if we find him?" "I don't know," Roland whispered. "But I want to ask." They sat in the car for another 10 minutes, watching the children play. Then, slowly, they drove back. Once inside the mansion, Sarah helped Roland back to bed. He was exhausted. His legs shook more than usual. "You're pushing yourself," she said quietly. He looked up at her with stubborn eyes. "I'm living." Sarah touched the back of his hand. "There's a difference between living and rushing. I don't have time to wait." Sarah didn't argue. She just adjusted his pillow and dimmed the light. He fell asleep quickly. That night, Sarah stayed up reading the list again. She traced each line with her finger. One item stood out: laugh without faking it. She closed the notebook and set it on her nightstand. She couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed. Not a polite chuckle, not a tired breath. A real laugh. She wanted to help him find that again. She lay back, turned off the lamp, and tried to sleep. But around midnight, she heard it. A loud thud. Then something crashed. Sarah sat up straight. Her heart jumped. She ran out of her room, down the hallway, barefoot. Roland's door was open. Inside, the room was dark. The lamp by the bed had fallen. The tray of water was on the floor, and Roland was collapsed beside the dresser. "Mr. Miller," Sarah cried, rushing to him. His body was cold. He was shaking. His breathing was fast, too fast. She dropped to her knees and checked his pulse. It was racing. His eyes were open but glazed over. "Can you hear me?" she asked firmly. He blinked barely. Sarah moved quickly, lifting his head gently into her lap. "You're okay. Just breathe. I'm here." He didn't answer. She grabbed the emergency kit from a wall and checked his heart rate on the portable monitor. It was erratic. She fumbled for the oxygen mask and placed it over his nose. He coughed hard. James rushed into the room, eyes wide. "What happened?" he asked. "He collapsed," Sarah said, voice tight but steady. "Call the hospital, but I want to stabilize him here first." James nodded and ran to the phone. Sarah kept her voice soft as she pressed a cold cloth to Roland's forehead. "Don't leave yet," she whispered. His hand twitched. Then he murmured, barely audible, "Thought I could reach the window." Sarah blinked. "Why?" "I wanted to see the moon." She held his hand tighter. "Next time, tell me. Don't go alone." He coughed again, this time weaker. Sarah took a deep breath. "You're not going to die tonight. Do you hear me?" He opened his eyes a little. "Bossy." "Always," she said firmly. They got back in bed. James stood beside her, handing over things as she asked, for drip, warm blanket, fresh oxygen tank. By 1:30 in the morning, Roland's breathing had calmed. His eyes were closed again, but his fingers were still curled gently around Sarah's. She didn't move. She stayed seated on the stool beside the bed, one hand holding his, her eyes studying every line in his face. When James returned with fresh tea, Sarah whispered, "He almost left." James nodded. "He's been close many times, but tonight felt different." Sarah looked down. "He went looking for the moon." James said nothing. Sarah's voice was softer now. "He's not afraid to die, but he's afraid of dying alone." James sighed. "Aren't we all?" Sarah stood and walked over to the window. She looked out. The moon was full, bright, hanging in the clear night sky. She opened the window a little and let the light touch the bed. Then she sat back down beside Roland. "Now you don't have to go anywhere to see it," she whispered. By morning, Roland was still breathing, weaker but steady. Sarah hadn't slept. When he opened his eyes, she was still there, sitting in the same chair. "You're stubborn," he said weakly. "So are you," she replied. He smiled faintly. "How bad was it?" "You nearly stopped breathing," she answered. "You tried to walk across the room in the dark." "I used to do that all the time," he muttered. "You're not who you used to be." "I know." She leaned forward. "But you're still here, and that means something." He turned to her, his voice low. "I didn't want you to see me like that." "Why not?" "Because I looked weak." Sarah shook her head. "No, you looked human." He stared at her. She leaned back in the chair, exhausted but calm. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He nodded slowly. "Why me?" Roland blinked. "Why did you ask for a nurse like me?" He looked away for a long moment, then answered, "Because I've been surrounded by power my whole life. But I've never been around peace." Sarah didn't speak. He continued, "You walked into my life like you had nothing to prove. You didn't try to impress me. You didn't try to fix me." She looked at him gently. "I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to stay until the end." His voice cracked slightly. "You don't know what that means to me." Sarah placed her hand on his gently again. "I think I do." Later that day, after he had eaten a little and slept more, Sarah returned to her room to rest. But before she closed her eyes, she took the list from the drawer and added dates beside the completed items. Asterisk, walk outside, done. Eat roasted corn, done. Watch children play, done. See the moon again, done. Asterisk. She paused at the next one. Apologize to my son. She stared at a long time. Then she reached for the contact file James had given her earlier. She opened the brown folder. At the bottom, under old letters and forgotten names, was a single phone number. Beside it, Jacob Miller. Sarah didn't call. Not yet. But she held the number in her hand. And for the first time, she believed the day was coming soon. That night, Roland asked for something new. "Sing to me," he said. Sarah blinked. "What?" He smiled gently. "I haven't heard a lullaby since my mother died." Sarah hesitated. "I don't sing well." "I don't care." So she did, softly, a lullaby her grandmother used to hum when she was scared. Her voice was low, quiet but steady. Roland closed his eyes and let the song carry him to sleep. Sarah watched him rest. And for the first time since she arrived, she didn't feel like just a nurse. She felt like someone fulfilling something much bigger than a job. The next morning, Sarah sat in the garden alone. The air was cool, and the sun filtered softly through the trees. She held a piece of paper with Jacob's number in her hand. She thought about Roland's collapse, about how fragile he had become, about how little time was left. She knew what she had to do. James found her there 20 minutes later. "I've been asking around," he said quietly. "I think I've found him." Sarah looked up. "Where?" "A mechanic shop in a small town about 2 hours from here." The name matches. The age matches. It could be him. Sarah stood. "I need to go." James looked at her carefully. "What will you say?" Sarah folded the paper. "The truth." The drive was long. Sarah sat in the back seat of the car, holding a small wooden box James had given her. Inside was an old photo, a young Roland standing beside a woman holding a baby. They were smiling. The baby had soft curls and big eyes. He couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Sarah stared at the photo the entire drive. When they reached the town, it was quiet, dusty roads, small shops, a few motorcycles parked near the corner. The driver pointed toward a garage with a faded sign, Jacob's Auto Repair. Sarah stepped out, heart pounding. She walked toward the open garage door. Inside, a man with short hair and grease on his hands was wiping down a tool. He looked up. "Yes," he said. Sarah stepped closer. "Are you Jacob Miller?" The man narrowed his eyes. "Who's asking?" Sarah held out the photo. He stared at it. His face changed. First shock, then anger, then silence. "I don't know who you are," he said tightly. Sarah didn't blink. "But you know who he is." Jacob looked away. "He sent you." "No," Sarah said. "He didn't ask. I came on my own." He picked up a wrench and started working again. "I don't want to talk about him." Sarah stayed where she was. "I understand." "No, you don't. He's dying." Jacob froze. She said it again, softer. "He's dying." Jacob's jaw clenched. His hands tightened on the wrench. "I haven't seen him in 27 years, he said. "You think that matters now?" "He doesn't want your forgiveness," Sarah said. "He just wants to say sorry." Jacob laughed bitterly. "He should have said that before." "He's scared," she said. "He just wants peace." He slammed the tool down. "And what about my peace? Do you know what it's like to grow up thinking you weren't good enough for your own father? To watch your mother cry herself to sleep?" Sarah didn't move. "I'm not here to defend him. He was wrong. I know that. You know that. But right now, he's a man who's about to take his last breath. And all he's asking is to look you in the eye one last time." Jacob's eyes filled with tears. He turned away. "I don't know," he whispered. Sarah took a deep breath. "You don't have to love him. You don't even have to forgive him. Just let him say goodbye." Jacob didn't speak. Sarah left the photo on the table, then turned and walked away. She didn't know if he'd come, but she had done her part. When Sarah returned to the mansion, Roland was asleep. His chest moved slowly up and down. She sat beside him and took his hand. He opened his eyes after a few minutes. "You look tired," he whispered. "I had to go somewhere." He blinked. "Far?" She nodded. "Yes. For me? For your peace." He stared at her. "What did you do?" "I told the truth." He closed his eyes again, a tear sliding down his cheek. "I'm scared, Sarah." "I know. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of being forgotten." She held his hand tighter. "You won't be." He turned his face toward her. "Stay with me tonight?" She nodded. "Of course." And that night, as he drifted off to sleep, he whispered one more thing. "You're the last good thing that ever happened to me." It rained that morning. Not hard, just soft, steady drops, tapping the windows like fingers knocking gently on glass. Sarah stood by Roland's bed, watching him sleep. His chest rose and fell slowly, like each breath took effort. His skin looked paler than it did the day before. She hadn't left his side all night. She didn't sleep either. Her eyes stayed open, watching ready. She kept thinking about Jacob. She had left the photo on his table. She said what needed to be said, but she had no idea if he would come. It had to be his choice. James walked in quietly with a breakfast tray, toast, sliced papaya, and warm tea. Sarah shook her head. "He hasn't woken up yet." James placed the tray on the table. "It's okay. Let's stay there. Maybe the smell will help." Sarah nodded. She looked back at Roland. "He's getting weaker." James sighed. "He's been holding on longer than I expected." Sarah looked up. "I think he's waiting for someone." Henry understood. "Jacob." Sarah nodded. "He needs closure. That's the only thing left." At 10:43 in the morning, there was a knock on the front door. James opened it. Sarah didn't hear it first, but she heard the footsteps in the hallway. Not James's. He always walked in slow, even steps. These steps were heavier. Nervous. Unsure. She stood up from a chair and turned toward the door just as it opened slowly. A man stood there. He was in his 40s. His jeans were worn. His jacket soaked from the rain. His hair was short, and his eyes carried the weight of years. Jacob Miller. He looked at Sarah. She didn't speak. He stepped in quietly and looked at the man in the bed. His breath caught in his throat. Sarah stepped away to give him space. Jacob moved closer, staring at the face of the man he hadn't seen in almost 3 decades. Roland stirred. His eyes blinked open. He looked confused at first. Then he saw the figure standing beside him. His lips parted slightly. Jacob! Jacob's jaw tightened. Roland reached out a trembling hand. You came. Jacob didn't touch him. He just stared. I wasn't sure you would, Roland whispered. Jacob didn't answer. I look different, Roland said. I know. Jacob took a slow breath. You look smaller. Roland gave a weak smile. Life has a way of doing that to you. The silence that followed was long. Then Jacob spoke. I almost didn't come. I wouldn't have blamed you. I hated you for years. I hated myself longer. Jacob looked down. I remember the day you left. I know, Roland whispered. You didn't even say goodbye to Mom. Roland's eyes watered. I thought I'd come back. I thought I had more time. Jacob clenched his fists. She waited for you. Every birthday. Every Christmas. She died waiting. Roland closed his eyes tightly. I failed her. I failed both of you. You don't get to just say sorry and expect it to go away, Jacob said, his voice rising. Sarah tensed, but didn't step in. Roland nodded. I don't expect anything. Jacob looked at him, breathing hard. You destroyed our family. Yes, Roland said quietly. Jacob's voice cracked. You ruined everything. I know. Tears rolled down Roland's cheeks. I'm not asking for your love. I'm not asking to be forgiven. I just wanted to see your face again. Before I go. Jacob looked away. I wanted to hate you, he said. I thought if I ever saw you again, I'd walk out. Or scream. Or curse. Roland didn't respond. Jacob's hands trembled. But seeing you like this, so small, so broken. He turned back. I don't feel hate anymore. Just sadness. Roland blinked. That's more than I deserve. Jacob stepped closer. He looked at the tubes, the wires, the thin man lying there like he could disappear any second. He reached out and took his father's hand. Roland flinched in surprise. But Jacob held it firm. I'm not here to heal the past, Jacob said. I just want to be here now. Roland sobbed quietly. Sarah wiped her eyes silently. They sat together for the next hour. Jacob talked about his garage, his 2 sons, the way he taught them how to fix engines with their bare hands. Roland smiled faintly. Sounds like you became a better man than I ever was. I became what you weren't, Jacob replied. That was the goal. Roland nodded slowly. Then I'm proud. There was a long pause. I wish I had more time, Roland said. Jacob looked at him. You don't. I know, but you have this. Roland turned his head slightly. This moment. Sarah's heart tightened. Roland squeezed his son's hand. Will you stay a little longer? Jacob looked at the clock, then at his father. Yes. Later in the evening, the rain stopped. The air outside smelled like wet leaves and clean earth. Roland asked Sarah to open the window. She did. He closed his eyes and let the breeze touch his face. Sarah, he said softly. She came to his side. Thank you. She smiled gently. You did it. You saw him again. He turned his head weakly toward her. Can I ask you one more thing? She nodded. When the time comes, will you hold my hand? Sarah sat beside him. I'll be here. He looked at Jacob, who sat quietly across the room. I lied so much in my life, Roland said. But not now. Not with you. You were the only honest thing I had left. Sarah reached for his hand. I'll stay until the end. And in that moment, for the first time since she met him, he looked at peace. The house was quieter than usual the next morning. Sarah knew what that meant. It wasn't the same quiet she first felt when she arrived weeks ago. That silence was cold, distant. But this quiet was different. It was soft like a blanket gently being pulled over something sacred. Sarah stood outside Roland's door for a few seconds longer than normal. Her fingers hovered over the handle. She knew what today was. When she finally opened the door, the room was dim. The curtains had been pulled halfway open, just the way he liked them. Roland lay still in bed. His chest rose and fell slowly. His skin was pale. His hands rested gently on the blanket. Sarah walked in quietly. He turned his head as if he had been waiting for her. You came early, he said, voice thin and raspy. I couldn't sleep, she replied, sitting beside him. He nodded slightly. Me neither. She picked up the glass of water beside the bed and helped him sip a little, then placed it back. Pain. Not much anymore, he whispered. It's more tiredness. Sarah reached for his hand. It felt colder than before. I'm here, she said softly. I know, he breathed. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Then he turned to her again. Is Jacob still downstairs? Sarah nodded. Yes. He stayed the night. Roland's eyes blinked slowly. I didn't expect that. I think he needed it too, she said. He coughed lightly, then looked up at the ceiling. I thought I would die full of regrets, he said. But now it feels lighter. You did what you needed to do, Sarah said. You said goodbye. He looked at her carefully. But it's not just Jacob I want to say goodbye to. Sarah blinked. What do you mean? He smiled faintly. You. Sarah, you came into this house when I was just a shell. You didn't run. You didn't ask for anything. You just gave. She felt tears rising, but she swallowed them. I didn't do much. You did everything, he whispered. He coughed again, this time deeper. Sarah helped him sit up slightly, then rubbed his back gently until the coughing stopped. When he lay back, his breathing was more strained. Sarah leaned closer. Do you want me to call Jacob now? He shook his head. In a minute. Just stay with me first. She stayed. She held his hand. She watched his eyes flicker open and close like a candle almost out. Sarah, he said again, barely louder than a breath. Yes. I'm not afraid anymore. She nodded, her throat tight. You shouldn't be. He blinked slowly. Promise me something. Anything. When it's time, don't let go of my hand. Sarah's eyes filled. I won't. He closed his eyes, but a tear slipped from the corner. I never had a daughter, he said quietly. But if I did, I would have wanted her to be just like you. Sarah didn't speak. She couldn't. Her hand trembled as she held his tighter. You were my last gift, he whispered. She wiped her face with the edge of her sleeve. I'll stay with you until the very end. He gave the faintest nod. Sarah reached for the bell and called James. A few moments later, James stepped in quietly, followed by Jacob. Jacob walked to the other side of the bed and looked down at the man who once walked out of his life. Roland opened his eyes one last time. He looked at his son. Jacob reached for his hand and gave it a firm, steady grip. Then Roland turned his head slightly towards Sarah. He saw her face. He saw her tears. And he smiled. His lips moved. Thank you. Sarah leaned down and kissed his forehead gently. Then they all sat with him. No one said a word. No one needed to. Because this moment didn't need more noise. It needed peace. And that was exactly what he left with. He passed quietly. Sarah was the last person he looked at. Jacob was the last person he forgave. James stood in the corner, head bowed, the old photo of Elena and baby Jacob resting on the dresser. The doctor came later to confirm it. Sarah stepped aside while the body was cared for and prepared. When it was done, she walked back into the room one last time. On the bed, under the pillow, she found a folded note. It had her name on it. She opened it. Sarah, you fulfilled my final wish. You were honest. You were kind. You were the last thing I never knew I needed. Don't change for this world. They don't make people like you anymore. Goodbye. R. Sarah folded the letter slowly, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into her bag. She didn't cry again. Not now. Because this goodbye wasn't just about sorrow. It was about peace. It was about finishing something right. The funeral was small. By request. Jacob stood at the front with his wife and 2 sons. James read a short note Roland had written before he passed. Sarah sat at the side, her hands in her lap, her eyes calm. When it was over, Jacob walked up to her. Thank you, he said. Sarah nodded. He was waiting for you. I know. He didn't ask for anything except a goodbye. Jacob looked down, and he got it. He looked back up. You gave him more than that. She gave a small smile. Maybe, but he gave me something too. Jacob nodded. If you ever need anything, my garage is always open. Sarah smiled again, warmer this time. Thank you. They shook hands. Then he walked away with his family. That night, Sarah sat in the garden. The same bench Roland sat on the first day, they stepped outside together. She closed her eyes and let the breeze touch her face. The list was complete. Everything he wanted, every small wish, every quiet dream had been honored. And Sarah? She wasn't the same girl who walked into that mansion weeks ago. She was stronger now, not because she saved someone, but because she helped someone die in peace. And sometimes, that's the greatest thing anyone can do. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling us what you thought. See you in the next story. Yindi.